big batch of green beans in my garden,
All right,
and
focus
I
this
found
year.
this recipe that I absolutely love.
Here,
Hungarian
this is our
green beans.
This is our second year.
And I love it so much.
Last year we were still adjusting, getting over COVID and all
And
that stuff.
today, I thought it was
We still do,
defrosted
had a
yesterday.
few Zoom people on our,
So I eat this bowl of some kind of recipe soup. And so I was eating the soup, but the middle of the container was still frozen, so I just drained off what had defrosted. I didn't get a single green bean today. When it gets all frosted.
We gotta start getting here before Cody.
I did.
You know, I was, when the guy
There's a
started
fin.
Oh, did you?
I was so disgusted.
let's discuss.
How are you doing your membership?
Morning. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
I am doing excellent. Thank you for asking. Slow training. I got to use my pressure thing for the first time. That was pretty awesome. We got one of those
I kept it on, but I
pressurized ones,
And then I started to hit, but
that was
when that
so
play
cool.
happened, I'm going, isn't that
I'm
a
a
fair,
guy.
didn't he
I can
fair
understand.
catch?
Yeah.
And the commentators were saying nothing about a fair catch. It wasn't a fair catch, but then they called it back.
Well, now, this is confusing because if he didn't call a fair catch, he was about to run. That's what he did.
Right.
He scored a touchdown.
They're not nailed to the floor. We can
Yeah.
scoop.
You know, I mean, yeah.
You know, I may be sitting over here, but
Going
I'm
crazy.
not, I'm gonna knock that thing over.
Oh.
I may be
The
all
whole-
the way over
That's your
here.
superpower?
Boiled down to the last 2 minutes.
No,
I
it's
mean,
because I'm.
the rest of the game was
just
just.
have a tendency to knock things over, including my.
Yes, yeah. Sort of.
Just poured in, yeah, just
Thankfully,
poured.
thankfully it's only water, so we don't have to worry about
Yeah,
staining.
if you're just like,
So a lot of people just
Go for it.
okay.
That's time because I didn't have time to come into the hour game, and now because.
You can ask her on it. I think
Those people
What's going on?
each other.
Oh,
I dropped my thing.
No, it's just, I just put a whole bunch of new checks in here, usually they don't slide around.
Yeah, and you can just watch the good stuff, so
It's just heavier.
he just records it, and then he fast forwards.
Fast forward right up until the time the quarterback.
Yes, I like it much better when I was studying it out.
Summer.
I remember years ago watching a game, when they kicked off.
She had her pouring or whatever,
And
and then I keep getting a monitor in the
Oh.
So if you're talking,
The Gophers are
you
in the
can
hole.
probably go to about here.
Okay. I just want to, that's part, I usually do stand here. I don't.
You do. You really, that's the problem, and I just let someone
And you
put
can
that.
still pick me up on the mic. It still picks me up saying,
Yeah,
Yes.
and that's another thing that's job to work on
Josh,
is
okay, you
like,
came up and.
it's working. Well, that's all I can do, because it's, these two are picking
I
up.
think this is right, big, so eventually, right?
Figure out how to do more mics, because I don't have 2 channels right now.
that's my computer at home, I only have 2 channels, so. One is to my keyboard and one's to my mic, that's all.
We're set for streaming.
Oh, really?
Yeah, got it going last week, and I figured out one of the problems I had from the prior.
You're streaming to YouTube?
So that's, and that's one of the things to talk about is, okay, what do we need to do to the recording?
Okay.
We're gonna get into the.
There's a, Mankato Unitarian Church.
Yes. You can, I mean, you can, I think, provide them heat and light and extend it, but.
Yes, awesome, thank you. Yeah.
Before then. Where I live, I know. make
I
a
have a
light
log,
and
I've started
everything.
trying to log.
If you have bigger
Nice.
farms.
You have some in additional
I
files.
don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
Some are.
He goes to another room.
First winter here, first winter here.
No, this is,
Oh, okay.
I'm using it now.
Oh, you're right.
Very first winter I experienced.
I did your 40 years. No, it's not as much fun to be outside and do stuff.
Or you could hunt them down, the building's not that big.
Anyway.
Nice to meet you.
I am, you want me to get it for you?
Yeah, just saying that the end is sort of
Or just write it on a piece of paper, Jim need to talk to you, and hold it up in front of the video camera back there, and then he'll come running. Or even better, just unplug the video camera, and he'll come running.
Oh, you know what, Deron,
Dr. Bombay.
if you do get chickens,
Yeah,
the place to go is Egg/Plant Urban Supply. It's in St. Paul on Selby, and they are the chicken people. And they've just got a little teeny store, but they're all about, you know, preserving food, and she's making gardening and but
He did a
they're
week at
definitely
Unistar on poetry, and of course, we're right in the front row, you know.
connection to everything.
Bruce and David hit it off.
But as he's listening too, so, yeah, that's that sounds.
You know, and besides the fact, you know, you can buy chickens at Tractor Supply, but wouldn't you rather go local, small local, you know? Right? Yeah.
Sounds so much better than trying.
Yeah, and I don't
It's getting real now, they're letting me in.
necessarily.
Well, I'm trying.
That's fine.
Yeah, you say something.
I would,
Now quick blow.
you know,
Make a wish.
urban supply.
All of the church,
Yeah.
It's time to get this started.
One last thing.
It's time to laugh.
I'll get this
No
right.
rest for the worship assistant.
You're just getting your steps in, it's okay.
That's right, I need those steps. Good morning. Please join us in singing the welcome song 188.
Come, come, whoever you are, wonder, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. One more time. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy fall. After living in Florida for so long, it's great to see the leaves change. And one of my favorite phrases is that autumn shows us that change can be beautiful. I don't really have any particular announcements other than just to kind of let you all know. I know Chuck sends out a newsletter type thing that lets us know what worship services are coming up and what the themes and who the presenters are. But just to kind of give you an overview, up next Sunday, we're going to have Dr. Sonia Williams, who's the Dean of Eden Theological Seminary, presenting by Zoom. And ironically, I'm going to be in St. Louis at Eden all week starting tomorrow. I fly out tomorrow. Then the next week, which is the first weekend in November, we're going to commemorate the Wheel of the Year and the celebration of Samhain and understand the commingling of how that particular new year for pagans is intertwined with like All Saints Day and All Souls Day and Dia de Muertes and all of that stuff. So that'll be me. You have to put up with me that weekend. And then the next weekend, my dear friend Steph Lee, who is a person who lives with several disabilities, who is a UCC minister in the making. She's going to present by Zoom and talk to us a little bit about disability awareness and where the church and congregations can develop things more along those lines. So some rich discussions coming up for the next few weeks, and I'm excited to be able to be a part of that. Anybody else have announcements that you'd like to make?
I'd like to welcome dear friends Roger Peck and Bruce's daughter, Robin, and they brought a collection of poetry books that belong to our longtime and beloved member Bruce Peck, which is Robin's dad. And I started a little sign-up sheet. So if you want to take a book or two of poetry, put your name and what books you took out, and then we'll just kind of start a lending library of poetry books.
Wow.
So,
That sounds great.
yeah.
Oh, and by the way, I do have one little thing. We're still organizing the religious education committee, and I do have a few people that are on that list. But if you want to be on the email list as we start to discuss that more, please just see me. Anybody else have something to share with us before we get going with the next part? Yes, please.
I have a favorite poem of mine of Bruce's that if there's time in the service, I'll read that.
Oh, sure. Wonderful. Well, we could probably do that during the joys and concerns, and when we start that, we'll start with you. How about that? That'll center us very well. Thank you. One more thing just to tout. My husband made some pumpkin bars for treats today, and I brought some apple preserves and some not homemade crackers to go with that. So, but stay around with us as we continue the reflection, discussion, and fellowship after service. Okay, if there's nothing else, at this time in the service, we're going to take a moment and center ourselves, try to free ourselves from all of those things that cause chaos as much as possible. And during this prelude, this instrumental prelude that Jim is going to play, we'll just call ourselves to this moment of spirituality. Yeah, he's going to play it like this. So let us center our hearts and minds. to join me either on page 570 or on the screen for our opening words, which we will join together in responsively. This is Prayer for the Earth by Barbara Deming. Spirit of love that flows against our flesh, sets us trembling, moves across it as across grass, erasing every boundary that we accept, and swings the doors of our lives wide. This is a prayer I sing, save our perishing earth. Spirit that hears each one of us, hears all that is, listens, hears us out.
Inspire us now.
Our own pulse beats in every stranger's throat, and also there within the flowered ground beneath our feet.
And teach us to listen.
We can hear it in water, in wood, and even in stone. We are earth of this earth, and we are bone of its bone.
This is the prayer I sing, for we have forgotten this, and so the earth is perishing.
At this time in the service, we engage in our territorial acknowledgement. We gather as a community of seekers to honor the interdependence of life, to respect the dignity of all, and to honor the land that we walk humbly upon. Friends, let us acknowledge that we now stand and sit upon the traditional territories of the indigenous people, the Dakota, for whom this very county and congregation are named, and others, the members of the original nations of this land who continue to cry out for justice, preservation, and self-determination. We are blessed with a space and a community and opportunities to strive to live out our common principles, to bring justice, equity, and compassion into our daily lives, to resist all that threatens the earth and her people, and to live out our dream of a world community of peace, liberty, and justice for all. Let these thoughts carry us forth as we journey and worship together.
Join me in the words of opening the chalice. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers, to heal with love, to help with compassion, to bless with joy,
To serve you, Spirit of freedom, in the fullness of community.
And now Chuck's going to lead us in our first hymn, which is number 131, Love Will Guide Us.
I'll play just a short intro and then we'll go right into it. Love will guide us, peace has guide us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has dried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
And so, as promised, since this is the beginning of our joys and concerns time, we'll begin with the sharing of a poem. Yeah, that might work.
Yeah, just
You can just stand like right about here and it'll be good to go.
It'll pick you
Oh,
up.
it just pointed up and it'll get,
It's a condenser mic, so it'll come, it'll,
Stand right there.
stand right here? Can you hear me? Okay. The seasonings of life. I've been around long enough to know subtleties of the seasons. Fall is beautiful and mature for many different reasons. The colors ground me to the earth, remind me of home. It bridges warmth with coming cold, a perfect contact.
fuzzy winged ponds, full of imperceptible roots, bark and limbs, a million invisible leaves. I'd given handfuls to the waiting children. They went twirling, whirling through the sky, eager, alive, with mapleness. Maybe for this, I woke that morning, wholly content, pierced through, astounded in my bed, wrapped in the warm light of maples. I jokingly exchanged an email as I shared the title of this sermon, Will the Circle Be Unbroken, by saying I'm going to share a little bit of my hillbilly culture with you with some song after this presentation. But the title of it is Will the Circle of Trees Be Unbroken? Because today I would like to talk to you about trees. Now, for those of you that have known me now long enough, know the trees, kind of my thing. But this is going to go along with a Unitarian Universalist curriculum that really focuses on the importance of trees as a conduit to further enrich our connection to the earth. It's called Circle of Trees. And through my traverses in research and religious education, I have really thought about how important it is to think about trees and what they contribute and offer to us, not just as human beings, but to the entire earth. It was when I was very young that I discovered that I had a connection to the trees. To one particular tree, I had a sort of draw that I couldn't explain. And as a young person growing up in a conservative Baptist church, talking about trees as divine was just not a real popular thing. So I kind of had to keep it to myself, except my grandmother, my great-grandmother, and I invoke her name an awful lot. Opal was her name. She lived to the ripe age of 107, and she had so much wisdom and love in her that if you've ever heard of the term self-actualization, that I have a hard time understanding what it means. If I were able to put a picture to it, it would have been my great-grandmother. But she understood this connection because even at 106, we were taking a walk through the acreage where she lived on this farm for so many years with her husband, my great-grandfather, who had passed on at that point. And she would stop and she'd say, "Come over here. Just put your hand on this tree. Close your eyes and see if you can hear something in your soul." That also wouldn't have been very popular in the Baptist church. So it was just between us, she told me. But as I continued to grow and learn about the importance of trees in elementary school and beyond, I was thinking about all of this connection that I continued to feel one day when my father took me fishing. Fishing is often part of my discourse as well because Duran and I often will say, I think today's a day for a fishing emergency. And that means we always have fishing poles in our car, so we have a way to go. But I was fishing in this place that Duran has actually visited called Otter Slough. In southeast Missouri, where I'm from, it is the beginning of the Mississippi Delta, all the way up into southeastern Missouri. And there are these things called sloughs, which are basically formed in low spots where the Mississippi River overflows its banks during the spring and fills them up. And they stay very wet, watery. Usually, some of them actually can support a really good fish population, which is why I was there. And as we went out on this little flat bottom John boat to go fishing in the early spring before the leaves were even out, there was this island in the middle that I guess I had never really truly noticed, mostly because the leaves were usually on the trees. And there in the middle of this island, which was about the size of this room, not much larger than that, if at all, in the middle of it, there was this huge tree, which had to be at least 150 feet tall. I mean, we all see the cottonwood trees here. It was like that tall. But it wasn't a cottonwood tree. It was a bald cypress tree. And I'm not sure how many of you know what a bald cypress tree is, because they don't really grow in Minnesota. But it is a deciduous conifer, so it loses its leaves in the winter, but it is a conifer like the spruces and all the other evergreen trees here. And it grows in very damp areas, often covered by water for most or all of the year. And the way that it actually breathes, if that's what it does, well, it are the knees that come up out of the ground. I'll just point to your knees. And so with this, one cypress tree can change the course of a terrain, because with these knees coming up, they collect soil on a delta where the soil is washing down the Mississippi River. And then, of course, they drop their seeds. And so what ends up coming up is what's called a cypress dome. Now, this particular cypress dome that had sort of emerged out of the ground, talk about one of the acts of creation. It was also a bird sanctuary because, the birds would come there and nest because they were not as worried about predators coming across the deep water of the slough to get the babies and all of those things. And of course, everybody's favorites, there were snakes all around and, and there are many other creatures and plants, other water-loving plants whose seeds would float on the water would end up on this dome. And so this island would be created. And at the center, again, was this huge tree. And if anybody had ever seen a cypress tree, you all can look it up on Google if you haven't seen one. They're probably not the most beautiful trees in the world, especially when there's no leaves on them, because they're all gnarly. But I later found out that this particular tree was probably about 500 or 600 years old, because this is one of the few places in southeast Missouri that had not been drained of the swamp in order to increase farmland. Now, what does this story have to do today besides the tree? Well, it's because of this connection with trees that I had as a kid that I was drawn to this. And I kept asking to go fishing, not just because I love fishing, but also because I wanted to go see the different seasons that were going on in this island. And as the curriculum suggests that I want to bring into our congregation, it was a circle of trees because it had parented other trees around it. And there was this entire ecology, this little ecosystem, biome, that had been created that was safe. And it was whole. And it was a sanctuary, and it was filled with life. It was fertile because it had collected all of the soil. And my connection to this day remains. That tree is there. And one of the other astonishing things about it, if you don't know about the New Madrid Fault in that area of southeast Missouri, it's the site of the most powerful earthquakes in North America in 1811, 1812. And this tree withstood those tremendous earthquakes. Oh, the wisdom this tree must have had seen. There were major Civil War battles that had been fought in that same exact area. And so that collective wisdom is something that keeps me in awe. As we look for ways to increase our involvement in environmental stewardship at such a time and such a precipice for need, our connection to trees, I believe, can help us unite together, become a circle of people that we already are, but focused on trying to find ways that we could make the earth a place of healing more so than what it seems to be right now. Yesterday, Josh and I went to the Minnesota Zoo, or what, I think the Como Park Zoo, whatever it's called, and I'd never been to the zoo. I'd been to the conservatory because I have this real connection with plants, but I'd never gone out into the zoo and looked at the polar bears. And one of the things we thought was like, wow, this animal is extremely endangered because of climate change. But you see, trees are helpful in so many ways, not just for creating new things like islands, but also, most of you probably know, if not, here's some new information, that the Amazon rainforest is actually, at least in part, responsible for the climate that goes on along the equator, all the way around the globe. It affects the weather. And the more trees that are cut down, the more it's going to change weather patterns. And we don't stop and sometimes think about that. It's not just about global warming. There's so many other things going on. How do we, as a faith community, just the few of us, how do we embody the circle of trees in the way that we do things in our spirituality and in our social and environmental action? One of the things about the Circle of Trees curriculum is it actually calls for people to get together outside with trees. So my proposal that I eventually will bring through our religious education committee is that maybe, now probably not this winter, but in spring and summer we could go on some little journeys in our small group ministries or whatever and just go and experience trees. Like kindergartners in Germany who get to go out and just like touch trees. I love that. I wish I had been able to do that in my kindergarten, but I was too busy being taught how to read. And, well, that's a different presentation for a different day. Instead of being in kindergarten. So I bring the challenge to all of us. How do we create and maintain a circle for concern for the earth, for the trees, and all that the trees embody? How do we keep that circle unbroken? How do we, if it is broken, heal the circle once again? One of the things I'm always prepared for, just in case kids come in, because I love children's time, I'm always prepared. And if anybody loves to color, please feel free to come and get one of these from me. This is a tree of life. And that's how I'm going to sort of wrap this up by talking about the concept that almost every major world religion, faith tradition, has at least one part of it that is focused on a tree or trees. Like the Yggdrasil, which is how I say it. I think other people say it differently, which is from the Nordic pagan tradition. But there's also the original tree of life idea, which comes from the Kabbalah, from Judaism, that embodies all of these things. So the tree, as a spiritual image, is something that is timeless. It appears in the Vedic scriptures from Hinduism. It appears in so many indigenous traditions as this sacred place. And of course, one of my favorite movie series, you know, I've talked about it before. Isn't it Awa is what the tree spirit is called in that series. And it goes beyond all of that. How can we be that circle together or be part of that circle to continue to try to heal the earth by connecting through the power of trees? So I invite you, if you're interested in that kind of thing, to follow along with us as we explore opportunities to just be with trees. And I also invite you to think about ways that maybe you could go out and plant a tree. Maybe you could give a donation to somebody who's planting a tree, like the young lady that came and presented, who's coming again in the spring as well. All kinds of opportunities avail themselves for this. So let us be a circle that is unbroken for the trees. At this time, we have a song for meditation before our time of congregational reflection. And this is the song from my culture. This is our time for reflecting, so feel free to share any thoughts.
I have one, as usual. So, you were talking about the wisdom of the tree, 500 years old, whatever. That tree was a seed at one point. That seed could have been underground for 100 years before that, before it germinated. So there's more wisdom, and that wisdom is so important because people forget about what's underneath the ground. We can't see it. But, you know, and I'm not sure about this, but it's possible there's more biomass underneath the ground than there is above the ground. And so I just wanted to say that tree has some wisdom as a seed as well before it germinated.
Absolutely.
So.
And they're finding out so much about how they're communicating with each other and sending messages, and it's just very, very cool. And then don't even get me started about mycelium.
Okay.
What?
Mycelium.
From my
yeah. Okay.
The storytellers of the forest.
Have you heard of forest kindergartens or forest schools? I just found out last week that I'm probably going to be going to Denmark to study them this summer.
Nice.
I'm very excited
That
about
sounds
that.
wonderful. I expect a full report.
A sermon.
Yeah, that's right.
A memory that I flashed on immediately was when I was a kid, we lived in the suburbs of Kansas City, but kind of the outer suburbs, and there was a wooded area behind our house. And right next to the wooded area was kind of a vacant field, but there was this one oak tree in the middle of this vacant field. And we realized that, oh, this is the perfect climbing tree, because you could reach the first branch and get up, and the branches were spaced apart nicely, that you could get pretty high up there, and it was very sturdy and everything. And that feeling of being high up and seeing over the forest and all that stuff was amazing. But then they began to develop the land, and that was one of the first casualties of that, was they cut down that tree. there was a grieving process for us.
Yeah. One of my fondest memories of Bruce Peck, who we just talked about, was when we first started going to Camp Unistar. He had been going to Camp Unistar for a long, long time, and he was so wonderful at helping us feel welcome and stuff. But we never got to go to camp on the same week that he did, until one of the last years that he
Was up there.
reserved to go to camp, but then he got sick and he couldn't come. But we were with his brothers quite often, and his nieces and nephews and things. But Unifer was a big tree on the island that used to be so huge, and he would climb up on that tree before. But when we got to camp, it had been hit by lightning, and it had you couldn't climb it or anything. It was cut down.
It was
It was a dead
Hulk there. Yeah.
but it was still in our memories, and still delighted children. They had made fairy houses and stuff for it, and it was just, but whenever I think of trees, one of my first thoughts is Unifer and Bruce.
Well, we've got to start selling you on Camp Unistar, because you'd love it.
Oh, yeah.
For multiple reasons, and the fishing is good, right, Roger?
Okay,
The
well, I'm
fishing
sold.
is good.
The fishing is good.
Roger's actually fed the whole camp.
Right.
Fish that he's caught.
Yeah.
And happy hour. You love treats, so you're gonna love the happy hour too.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff
Right.
about it that you'd like.
Punching on my
You'd
buttons.
all like it. Come on, come on up.
Well, I've planted quite a few trees over the years, and when you plant a tree, your soul realizes that, oh, this is just a start. I've made a commitment to this tree, and so I have to figure out what does the tree need. And of course, they need water, but you become aware of the most vulnerable time in their life can be in the winter, when rabbits or shrews can chew their bark, and they can girdle the tree, and that kills it. And so I've done a lot of screen wrapping on tree bark, and got them through, and realized that they need mulch. You don't want to just have a shortly mowed grass underneath of them. They need a bed of 4, 5, 6 inches thick. So anyhow, you start to do all these things for the tree, and of course, it rewards you. And I have an unrelated story. I just can't resist. If you go fishing all your life, you're a veritable walking encyclopedia of fish stories. You remember stuff, and it's always the stuff that's totally unusual. And so it's locked in your memory banks. So I had on Star Island, which is a pretty big island. It's about 6 miles around it. It's out in Cass Lake, a pretty big lake, and in the island, there's Little Lake Wendigo, dynamite bass fishing lake. It's got everything bass needs for structure and whatnot. So I've been fishing there ever since I went to Unistar. So this is a sort of a fish story. I take my kayak and portage in. And so I really enjoy this fishing in the morning, but I have to get back in time for breakfast. So I have my little weather radio, and they're talking about, well, tomorrow morning there's a storm that's going to come through, and it should come through at about 7:30. So I'm thinking, well, you know, I bet I can still sneak out there. I'll go a little earlier, and by the time it's 7:30, I'll be heading back if it rains on me or if it blows. I don't care, you know. So I go out there, and I'm in this little bay that you first get into when you portage into Wendigo, and I'm out near the outer edges of it, and I'm facing east and fishing. And then for some reason, you know, have you ever had the feeling that there's someone behind you, you know? So I look back, and son of a bleep bleep, here comes the storm. It's deep blue, and on the west trees, they're starting to go whoo, whoo, you know, and I think, I gotta get going, right? You know, I put down a pole, and I start paddling straight east, right towards the portage. And the storm leading winds, actually before the blue cloud gets over me, the lead winds, which are really the highest velocity, they start blowing and they're pushing me. So as I'm paddling, I'm realizing that, well, my paddle isn't doing anything, but the wind is, I'm going like a bat out of wherever. Well, this is a shallow little bay. It's only 3-4 feet deep. And so when you get a big wind in a shallow bay, what happens? I've never had this happen before in my life. Whitecaps spring up right alongside the boat. And as I'm paddling, I'm thinking, boy, if I was going in any other direction, I'd be in big trouble. But the wind is shooting me right at the portage. I came flying up and hit that portage, and the boat half slid up onto the sand. And the first thing I said is, well, I've never done that before. So that was my I'll never forget it story.
That's awesome.
Yeah, fishing does bring those memories to mind. The tree that I was talking about, I could talk about so much, but I was trying to make sure it was short enough that we had time for discussion. But by that same tree, that bald cypress tree, I caught the largest crappie that I'd ever caught in my life, and my dad insisted that I got it taxidermied. And it's only recently, after my father died last year, that I came into that again, and I don't like taxidermy, so it's been donated to somebody who has one of those sportsman houses or man caves or whatever. But it was the tree, it was the area around the tree that made the cover for this huge fish. I mean, it was huge for me. Yeah.
I feel a slight need to put out a plug for Lebanon Hills Park right now. You went walking in there yesterday, just to see all the leaves changing.
Perfect
It's
time.
gorgeous. It's a wonderful time to be there.
Yeah.
They have some great trails.
Well, I invite us to continue our reflection and discussions as they lead us after the service today, and have treats, which I've been looking forward since yesterday, because I wasn't allowed to eat them.
Guess what, we have a song for that.
So if you would join me, please rise as you're able, and join me in our closing hymn, number 21.
Oh,
and appreciate a tree today. And take this in whatever direction the Spirit leads you to connect with the earth on an ongoing fashion to heal the world. Go in peace.
So to paint a picture, a little more of a picture of camping.
Just people trying to help you build a sensory friendly trick-or-treating experience for those with autism and stuff like that.